testimony of Jesus Christ. There will be people in the tribulation who have the testimony of faith in Jesus Christ. And they will. This is the war here. The warfare is out in the open. With us, it's hidden. But now it's going to be wide open for everyone to see. And I stood, and now we're to chapter 13, and I stood upon the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his 10 horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. Some of this, when we get to chapter 17, it goes back to this subject about the 10 horns and the 7 heads, and I'm going to next week explain it thoroughly. I'm not going to do that now, but we will go through why he's described 2 ways there. I will say just for now, the 10 horns are 10 different world rulers. They, the earth, and it looks really like, I would say most probably after the rapture of the church. It could form before the church. There could be a one world government before the church is taken up. But there will not be a mark of beast, and the Antichrist, when he signs a peace treaty with Israel, that begins a tribulation. So if he's going to sign a peace treaty with Israel at the beginning of the 7-year tribulation, then he has to come to power to some degree before then. So it is possible that the Antichrist is alive today, he's a world leader, and we could actually watch his rise to power. That is possible. But we are not destined for this great tribulation. It's much more likely after the rapture, because we're not in his way to form it to, because this work of this one world government is satanic, and with the church out of the way, it's much easier to do. But these are things that are coming up. But there will be 10 rulers, and the Antichrist will deal with them. He'll come out of one of those. We'll get into that a little bit more later here. Okay. Now, remember those 4 kingdoms we talked about? The Babylonians, and then the Medes and the Persians, and then the under Alexander the Great, the Greek Empire, and then the Roman Empire. Parts of those empires are represented in the final, empire of the Antichrist. Certain traits of them are portrayed there. So we see it here in Revelation 13:2, and it goes way back to the book of Daniel. We talked about these. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard. Remember, Alexander the Great portrayed as a leopard because he conquered the world so quickly. You see the leopard. And his feet were the feet of a bear. The bear spoke of the Medes and the Persians, wild and manly but powerful. And then they were really amongst the world's most amazingly terrible rulers. And then his mouth is the mouth of a lion, like the Babylonians. Okay? And the dragon gave him his power and his seat in great authority. So the beast here is the Antichrist, and he's talked about as coming up out of the sea. And there are 2 interpretations, maybe they're both right. One is that the ancient Roman Empire encompassed the Mediterranean Sea, and that the beast will come out of one of those nations of that part of the world. The other is simply the sea of humanity, and that's often that term is used in the scriptures. Some people have tried to, we'll give you the reference they do, say that the Antichrist is a backslidden Jew. There's really no case for it. He's coming from the sea of humanity, probably a Gentile somewhere, from one of the countries that were involved in the ancient Roman Empire. And that's pretty vast. So, from there, the beast was seen to gather in the symbolism of these 3 preceding empires. I have them listed here. Greece, the leopard, in Daniel 7:6. The Medo-Persian Empire is the bear, in Daniel 7:5. The Babylonians, the lion, in Daniel 7:4. Empires do take things from former empires and incorporate them. And that's what we're seeing. So, the power of the beast was delivered from Satan himself, not delivered, derived. The power of the beast was derived from Satan himself. The dragon gave the beast his power and his throne and great authority. This accords with Paul, because he speaks of it in 2 Thessalonians 2:9, who referred to the lawless one, the Antichrist, the first beast of Revelation 13, as working all kinds of counterfeit miracles, signs, and wonders. All right. Now, go over this again. And I saw one of his heads as it was wounded to death. We spoke about this. If you're writing in your notes, would you write death stroke? And the reason is here, many have said, well, you know, that the Antichrist is going to be severely wounded and healed. No, he's going to die. And the scriptures are very clear about this. He received a death wound. That's the best translation for it. We'll, as we go through these tonight, you'll see how it has to be a death wound. And one of the things that occurs, because he'll actually be wounded in such a way that he dies, the Antichrist, his soul and spirit will be taken down into hell. When he is healed, he will come up out of the abyss, his soul, back into his body, and he really will think he's God at this point. All right? This is going to, how would I say, empower him. He says, I have been raised from the dead. I am God, worship me. Now, he has really imitated Christ here in a terrifying degree. Now, of course, the Lord's body was totally destroyed, if you will, through the beating, the whipping he received, the scourging. They pummeled his face and hanging on a cross. But this one wound will kill the Antichrist, and he will be healed. And based on that miracle, he will demand that the whole world worships him. Until this point, he's a world leader. He's called a man of peace. He will come to power through a false religious system talked about as Babylon. Ancient Babylon had a false religious system. This Babylon will have a false. They will bring him to power. But at this point, when he starts declaring himself to be God and demands to be worshipped, he will turn and destroy the Babylonian religious system that brought him to power. He will turn on them. So this is a really, this is a pivotal point here. That death and resurrection, he will demand worship, and he will kill those who will not worship him. So this happens in the middle of the tribulation period. Now, let's just look at the wording as it is here in the King James. And I saw one of his heads, as it were, wounded to death. And that's very clear, to death. And his deadly wound was healed. And the world wondered after the beast. And they worshipped the dragon which gave power unto the beast. And that is Lucifer. And they worshipped the beast, saying, who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him? So, at this point, he is claiming deity. Absolutely, outwardly, unabashed. And his proof is that I have been wounded, I have died, I have been resurrected. And in Isaiah 14, I will be like the what? Like the Most High. This is what he's doing. He's imitating the Lord here. Now, the beast comes out of the sea as 10 horns and 7 heads, with 10 crowns on his horn, to depict the revived Roman Empire of some type, which will also be represented by the fourth beast in Daniel, and the 10 horns. I'm not going to get into all this now. We'll never get through this. We'll get to this a little later. Let's see. Let me just move on from here. So, under the control of this central ruler in the Middle East, during the Great Tribulation, will be 10 nations. And I'm going to go a step further with that. The world will be divided up into 10 nations. And it actually goes through a one world government, then dividing up into 10 nations, and then the Antichrist taking control of those 10 nations. I know that's a little complex, but that's actually the full picture of it. Better repeat that. A one world government dividing into 10 kingdoms with 10 rulers. He is going to go to war with 3 of those rulers, defeat them, and the other 7 are going to go, yes, sir, we bow down. That's the picture we're going to get. It's not like the whole world is just going to run to this Antichrist ruler. Men are men, and they don't want anyone else to control them. But he will manage to take control. But there's a process going on here. And the 10 horns do speak of 10 kingdoms and 10 kings. Sometimes it's called different terms, but the horn speaks of power, the authority of a king here. All right. I mentioned the fatal wound. If you look at Revelation 5:6, give you an idea why we say it's a fatal wound. And I saw, and lo, in the midst of the throne, and of the 4 living creatures, in the midst of the elders, a lamb hath stood as it has been what? Slain. That's the same Greek word describing what happens to the Antichrist. So because here we understood the lamb that was slain, it was Jesus was slain and died. When he receives this death stroke, he too is going to be slain. And he too is going to be resurrected. All right. In Revelation 13:5 and 6, and there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given to him to continue 42 months. That is 3.5 years. So we see in the middle of the tribulation, his death and resurrection, his claim to deity, and demanding to be worshipped. And he opened his mouth and blasphemed against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle and them that dwell in heaven. And of course, now we get into his authority, and it's clear that he will manage to control the whole world as a one world leader. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. Most of those who become Christians during the tribulation period will end up as martyrs. Some will somehow survive it. And their descendants will be the ones that grow up and repopulate the earth. That's who's going to repopulate the earth during the 1,000 years of Christ's reign. Okay, there will be people who became Christians during the tribulation, and somehow the Antichrist was not able to kill them all. All right. And all that dwell upon the earth will worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life, of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. Now, obviously, Jesus was slain on the cross in about 30 AD. But in God's mind, in eternity past, the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit had a conference. And they decided to make man, knowing that man would fall, and knowing that the second person of the Trinity, Jesus, would have to die for them. So his death was a decision made in eternity past. So here he's called the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. Before there was a person on this earth, it had already been decided that Jesus was going to have to die for those that were going to be created. That's how he's described here. God knowing the end before the what, folks? Before the beginning. This is an example that he really does know the end before the beginning. See, we mentioned his worldwide power here. As predicted in Daniel 7:23, he does devour the whole earth, trampling it down and crushing it. His dominion and reign will be terrifying and destructive, because the Antichrist has no regard for human life. He only has regard for his self-exaltation. Has no other concern except himself. Now, as we say, in 2 Thessalonians 2:4 and on, all inhabitants of the earth worship the beast except those whose names are recorded in the book of life. What are we doing here? Close. We've touched this already. Let's see. Notably here, there is no mention of the church. Because through these things, some will believe, most of them who believe will be martyred. There's no time to, what we think of as church fellowship and people who believe they will not receive a mark. They're going to be desperate to finding food. They're going to be in hiding from the Antichrist. The terrifying thing, but they are heaven bound, all of those martyrs. And they have a special place we've looked at under the altar waiting for them. So, the conclusion, instead of, building a church in this period, Revelation 13:9 through 11, if any man have ear, let him hear. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with a sword must be killed with a sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. This is a time that will try people's faith and will try people's patience. Now, last one, we talked about it last week, it's very clear here, Revelation 13:11, the beast that comes out of the earth. This is what we call the false prophet. And he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. And he is the one who will perform miracles in the presence of the Antichrist. And he is the one that will say, worship the image. He will make an image of the Antichrist, and he will demand that people worship it. So we have the dragon, Satan, who's been expelled from heaven, and he is in the atmosphere causing problems. We have the Antichrist, who's been slain and resurrected and demanding worship and all authority. And we have a false prophet who is performing miracles, even calling fire down from heaven in his presence. We call it the unholy trinity, those 3. Lucifer, the Antichrist, and the false prophet. The beast out of the sea is the Antichrist. The beast out of the land is the false prophet. Okay. We're in chapter 14. Well, we've done a whole hour already. Take a break. Take a 10-minute break. We'll look at this again.